of you have heard of the Jigsaw classroom? Okay, so this is going to be new to a lot of you, and for others of you, it's going to be something that you're familiar with. But I want to tell you about what the Jigsaw classroom is, because it is one of the, I guess, hallmark examples of a group that has that interdependence. You need each other, and the individual accountability, where everyone has to participate. And we are going to actually engage in a Jigsaw classroom. It's a little bit of a big group in here. Your class will be a little smaller, and I'm actually going to have you only in 3 groups. So your groups are going to be a little larger, but I'm going to actually break your large groups up into smaller ones. So I'll show you how to manage that and how to do it. So let me first tell you kind of what this is. For the Jigsaw classroom, what you start off with is a home-based group. So you're going to have a home-based group that you are accountable to. And each member of that home-based group is going to become an expert on a different topic. Okay? So you're actually only together for a couple of minutes in the beginning, then you're farmed out to your expert group. Now, when you're in your expert group, when you're doing this in your classroom, you would give them, maybe some readings ahead of time, some, materials, or if you're going to have them work in class on it, you might give them access to the technology, tell them some certain websites that you want them to look at, whatever materials, you would give them materials to work off of. Today, for the sake of our exercise, I'm going to give you the material of your brain and your experiences, because I'm in a room with folks I know you have good experiences to pull from, so I'm not giving you material for this, but in your classes, you would give them material for it. It could be a section of a textbook, it could be an outside reading, it could be a website, whatever it is. So you'll pick topics and how many of those. I probably recommend, about 3 to 4 or so, because you have to monitor during this expert group phase. This is where you work the hardest. Like, you're going to work up a sweat, because you got to go from group to group and make sure the experts really have the material you want them to bring back. Because if they don't, you've just wasted your class time. Okay? So you have to work really hard, and you don't want to have too many groups to monitor during that expert group phase. So I'm going to do 3 groups. And I'm going to not have to monitor you as well as I would if you were my students. But if you were my students, I'd be going in there and I'd be asking you, what do you got? That's good. This is not so strong. I think you need to go look at this source again. So I'm going to be over there checking and giving them feedback on what they're bringing back to their home-based group. Because after they're done being an expert, so this expert group, that amount of time varies depending on how big the task is. Today, you're not going to get a lot of time. You're going to get about 10, 15 minutes because that's all I got to give you. But in class, I often would spend 30 minutes. It could be 45 minutes, depending on how big the task is. So now you're in the expert group. After you all become experts, your job is going to be to teach your home-based group members the content that you learned. So I'm expecting all of the expert folks to have written down the key points. But they have to do that in about 2 minutes or less. So you're going to get 2, no laughing, Barry. Now you can give them longer, but remember, however many of you have 3 groups, if you're reporting and you're teaching, that's 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and you're asking for 30 minutes if you're doing it 10 minutes each. Today, you're going to get 2 minutes. In class, again, you could give 5 or 10, but you need to account and allow for enough time for that to have, again, it depends on how much substance you're giving them. But what you want to do is you want to have them, what it teaches them is, first of all, when you are teaching, very powerful way to learn. So your experts are going to be in a really good position at knowing that content. Second of all, it also focuses the experts on what's most important. Well, we have all this information here. What are the key concepts that I need to bring back? I don't need to give them all the details. I mean, you want to give them the key points. And that's where you, as the expert in the classroom, as the professor, need to go around and make sure that they have that information accurate. Because if it's inaccurate, they're feeding wrong information back to their initial group members. So during this last stage, this home-based group, everybody goes back to their original group. And today, you're going to get 2 minutes to go over the content and emphasize the key points. While you're doing that, the other members should be taking notes. And then if you want to really do it, you could even, if you want to really hold them accountable, you could give some kind of quiz or assignment or something related to it afterwards. You don't have to do that in your class, but it's another way if you wanted to add a 4th layer to the process. So what we're going to do is, these are the 3 groups that we're going to have. So I'm going to go and assign you to a home-based group. Once I assign you to your home-based group, after I'm done assigning recording everyone so everyone can hear and make sure everybody knows who their home base group is. Then that home base group is going to quickly, you have a minute to decide who's going to do which of those topics. Then I'm going to say, time to move. And when I say move, I'm going to have the self-selection versus assigned group folks over here. And you can just break yourselves up into a couple of tables. You don't all have to be one group. That's how you handle that. If the group is too large, because we have 10, 15 people, it could be too large. I think we have almost 40 people in here today. If you're in the second group, the equalizing workload, then you'll come over here to one of these two tables. And if you're in the grading, then you're going to come over here to one of these two tables. Okay? Questions about the process? All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to assign you to groups. Now, here's the trick. When you first start doing this, if you haven't done it before, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, and that doesn't give you the way you want it to work, because that gives you 3 very large groups. I have done that before, and lots of people do that the first time. So what you need to do is go 1, 2, 3 in your head. 1, 2, 3. You're a group. Okay. Now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. You're a group. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. You're a group. All right, let me have your attention, please. At this point, you should have all determined who is who, okay? This is the easiest part of the process, folks. Now, I want to do a quick timeout for process. I ended up having a perfect match, so I ended up having the last group have 3. What happens if someone walked in right now? What would I do?
Tell them to leave.
You're messing up my program. No. If they came in now, what I would do is I would tuck them into another group, and 2 people would share the expert role with one of them. Okay? So if that happens, you don't need to break a sweat and panic. You just throw them into a group, and then you'll have 2 people sharing and working together on one of the expert roles. Okay?
What happens if somebody walks in 5 minutes?
Well, then they're going to be a second person for sure, because I've already you already have a primary, so there'll be a second person, and I'll put them into an expert group and tell them they're a second person, and I'll tuck them in.
You can explain everything over to them.
I would just do a quick explanation. I mean, and I do this more than once, so hopefully they kind of get what happens after that. They would just need the prompt and all. So the first time is the most confusing time, but after you start doing it, if you're doing this pretty regularly, they know the routine. They catch on pretty quickly. All right, so here's where the chaos is going to happen. You're going to get up. Actually, wait, before you get up, I'm going to not have you sit here. So I'm going to move group 2 to here and group 3 there. That way I don't have to move all my handouts. All right, so group 2 is going to be here. Group 3 is going to be there. Group 1 is going to be over there. All right, go to your expert group. You're going to need paper and pen. So I have to stop the conversation. Everybody, come on back. Come on back. All right, they don't want to stop. I have to get them back. Dan's telling me, go get them back. Come back to me. I can't go on until I got your attention. So come on back to me. All right, in a second, don't move yet. In a second, you're going to go back to your home base group. When you're in your home base group, the first person can start. You're going to get 2 minutes, and then I will say stop. And then the second person will go, and I will say stop. I'm going to time you on my little clock and all. Make sure I have equal amounts so I don't rob anybody and not judge it right. So go ahead and get back to your group. So once I see you're settled, I'll start the clock. All right, the first person should be going now. All right, go ahead. Okay, group 2's turn. Switch, group 2. Group 2 go. Okay, stop. It's group 3's turn now. All right, stop. Now you get 2 minutes. Now you're going to get 2 more minutes to fill in the gaps if someone didn't get to finish and you have some questions. So 2 minutes for group processing of all the content. Go ahead, last time. Okay, need to bring it back. All right, let me just ask you, not about the content you were discussing, but about the process of participating in a Jigsaw classroom. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or observations? Yes?
I think it just so depends on the discipline. I could just already envision having the
back to their own groups and say, I really didn't get it, I really can't, I'm really not responsible as an expert. I can just envision that.
So that's where, your role during the expert group is. I mean, I'm sitting down with them. I mean, I didn't do all this with you because we didn't have as much time, but I'm sitting down with them. I'm asking them, not, how's it going? That's a terrible thing to ask them to go into the groups. Because I can almost guarantee they're going to say, fine, please get away from me. Just move on. Almost always they say fine. So when you're going to check in the group, you don't say, hey, how's it going over here? That's not productive. Instead, you want to do concept checks when you get into the group. What do you have for your first point? And you can call on different people to make sure that they have it. You can check to see that they're all writing it down, that they have the key concept. So, and then if they're not getting it, if they're off task, that's where you could come in and have a teachable moment to teach the expert groups. And you might need to do some teaching in that expert group, to help them really grasp it if they're not able to grasp it on their own. And you have to make sure the task is graspable for them. So you don't want to give them a task that's way, way above their head. It has to be something that you might have already covered and they have some background knowledge on it. So you wouldn't necessarily do this with completely brand new information because they may not be able to become an expert in 10 minutes. Most of us can't, right? But if it's something that they have a little bit of background knowledge on and you're asking them to just dive a little bit deeper, it should work out better. So it depends on the prep and all. Yes,
I
Shannon.
just have a question about, so obviously in your expert group, the students are going to grasp that information. But what is the carryover for when they go back to teach? Like, I feel like at least with my students, they wouldn't necessarily record as much information from the other groups.
So it depends on what you do later with that. I mean, if it's really not, you're not holding them accountable in any way, then the, point of taking notes and asking questions and all of that is diminished. But if there is some kind of assignment linked to it, some kind of accountability at the end, then it will, I think, transfer better. Now, of course, we're not asking them to teach each other. I mean, we are the experts. We're going to be the primary teachers. But we can ask them to go a little bit, dive into it a little bit more in detail, because learning with the intent to teach is a very powerful learning strategy. So what we want to do is try to increase the opportunities for students to teach one another, and to also, they're zooming in on key points. So maybe it's even some sections of a reading or something that you ask them to do, and now in class you're going to dive deeper, but now they have a little bit of background knowledge to help them move forward. So it doesn't mean that they have to master it in that 2 minutes or that 5 minutes, but it's exposure and focus. Hopefully that's happening there. So any other comments or questions? Yes, Chris.
I've actually used this before, a review for a test. And you have to have the class time to do it, but if you have the class time to do it, I actually give them specific question prompts, usually open-ended questions, and it might be a review sheet with 15 or 20 open-ended questions, and I'll tell them, I might take a couple of those questions from here and put it on the test. And so I'll give each of the initial groups, you've got questions 1 through 3. You have questions 4 through 6. You do 7 through 9, etc.
So now they're all together. And
yes, and so they're working as a group on just those 3 questions, and then they go back to their home-based group. I had the answers to questions 1 through 3, but everybody has the same sheet, and then they can also discuss it and ask questions, and hopefully, and I'd say to them, don't just take the answer that they say. If you question it or you don't agree with the answer, either bring it up during the group discussion or come and see me after class. But it kind of, it holds them accountable, but it also gives them an opportunity to, to review certain topics that I want them to review for a test.
Absolutely, that's a great way to use it. So, of course, there is no magic in any of this, right? I'm not guaranteeing that this is definitely going to work for you. I think it takes practice, especially in figuring out what the best task is for your discipline and how it's going to best work for you in your class. But the goal of this, think about what happened here. You were accountable back to your group. You couldn't loaf. I guess you could, but you might have 2 angry classmates, right? So the likelihood of loafing really goes down significantly. The likelihood of learning has just increased because you have that teaching kind of element also. So I think that that's a really powerful piece of this. And the research has shown that not only does it increase academic performance, but also it increases liking of peers who are different from you. Because what else happened? You went out and talked to people who weren't sitting next to you. So you can start off with the convenience, grouping, for your home group, but now you're also interacting with people across the room. And chances of you doing that are pretty slim unless you force it in some way, right? People tend to talk to the people who are next to them, and that's it. So it's a great, strategy to really get students engaged with other people who might be not like them.
guy that was here in the fall that did.
Todd's the price,
Yeah, who introduced all these. I just want to hip hip hooray.
Woohoo, I like
Doing this,
All
even
right.
if you're not doing group work like for the rest of the semester, like the first day doing some sort of jigsaw go around and knowing each other's names, really it could be super powerful for those students to then be able to have somebody to reach out to have a study partner or just to know somebody. I found it really, I'm in theater so they have to talk to each other, but there were differently abled sort of people in one of my class, and it helped that person be totally integrated with everybody because they had to meet everybody and they instantly sort of had friends, even if it was surface level. So
Excellent.
just to do the simple activity, even if it's just about the syllabus or something like that, the first day of class, to really say, let's
You
get
could
it
do
going.
a jigsaw on the syllabus
Right.
where you're having,
Which is
you know,
sort of
you
what I
have
did.
this assignment, you have, you know, this issue related, you know, you have policies and procedures, you have, you know, different topics, so you could do it. The one thing I will caution you about is that you need to make sure that the groups have even kinds of tasks so that they take about the same amount of time. So you can't have an expert group that's like not even close to being done and somebody else has been done for 5 minutes. So it's important to try to make sure that they're equal in terms of how long those tasks